The courthouse smelled like old paper and cheap coffee. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead, washing the marble floor in pale, colorless light. It was a kind of place where time didn't move. It waited, and behind the counter sat Thomas Holland, tapping his pen like a ticking clock. He'd worked this desk for 18 years. Same view, same complaints, same faces that came and went, begging for signatures and mercy. He didn't see people anymore, just problems wrapped in skin. Until that morning, a woman walked in. She wasn't loud. She didn't rush. She carried a single black folder, her posture straight, her stride confident but unhurried, the kind of calm that filled the room without a word. She stopped at his desk. "Good morning," she said, her voice low, even, with that precise, educated tone that didn't beg, it belonged. "I'm here for the credential confirmation. Justice Department clearance." Thomas didn't look up. He didn't have to. He'd already decided what box to put her in. He said flatly, still scribbling, that line's for official personnel only. Public inquiries are over there. He pointed lazily toward a long line near the back. Mostly older black women, tired from waiting. "I said I'm here for clearance," she repeated. He sighed and finally glanced up. That was when he noticed the tailored gray suit, the calm eyes, the air of authority that didn't match her words. But instead of adjusting, his pride dug in deeper. "You heard me," he said, with that tight little smirk people wear when they think they're untouchable. "This counter's not for walk-ins." She didn't flinch. "I'm not a walk-in." Thomas leaned back, folding his arms. "Lady, I've worked here longer than you've probably been practicing whatever it is you do. I know who's supposed to be here." That's when his co-worker at the next desk coughed, awkwardly, but Thomas ignored him. He'd made up his mind. He thought she was just another entitled type. The kind who thought her degrees or confidence made her special. The woman's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "You should check your list again." "Listen," he said, dropping his voice. "You don't have to make this difficult. We get people like you all the time. You show up, demand access, cause a scene." She interrupted softly. "People like me." He shrugged. "You know what I mean. The kind that think rules don't apply to them." Silence filled the air. You could feel it. Thick, heavy, dangerous. The guard near the metal detector looked away. The old woman in the waiting line whispered, "Lord, help him." And still, she didn't raise her voice. She just looked him dead in the eye. Calm, precise. "Is that how you speak to every woman who walks in here? Or just the black ones?" His pen froze mid-tap. Then he laughed, that uncomfortable kind of laugh people use when they feel their control slipping. "Oh, come on, don't make this about race. Don't play that card with me." "Then check your list," she said again. He didn't. Instead, he waved her off like she was a child. "I'm done. Either you step aside, or I'll have security escort you out. You don't belong here." That was it. Those were the words. The sentence that would ruin him. She said nothing, just stared at him a moment longer, the kind of stare that burns memory into a man's bones, then turned, picked up a folder, and walked out through the glass doors. He muttered under his breath, "Figures. Always think there's somebody." He went back to his paperwork. Didn't even notice the courthouse suddenly buzzing with movement. Phone calls, security whispers, senior staff running down the hall. It started small, then louder, then chaos. "Did you see her?" someone asked. "Who?" "The new nominee. She was just here." "Wait, nominee for what?" "For the Supreme Court. President's announcement is in 2 hours." Thomas looked up. The color drained from his face. "What was her name again?" asked the secretary, flipping through her tablet. "Lewis," said the administrator, hurrying by. "Justice Amora Lewis." The pen slipped from his fingers. Outside, the world was already changing. News vans swarmed the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted into microphones. The words "historic appointment" and "first black woman from Alabama" echoed through every broadcast. Inside, Thomas sat frozen at his desk, staring at the empty doorway where she stood just minutes before. He could still hear his voice, sharp, dismissive, dripping with pride. You don't belong here. Now, the echo hit different. It hit like a curse. That afternoon, the memo came down. All staff to attend the televised swearing-in ceremony at 4 p.m. Thomas didn't want to go. But when your boss looks at you with that pale, tight-lipped fear, you don't refuse. He walked into the courtroom hall that evening, suit stiff, palms sweating. Cameras everywhere, gold light flooding the room. And there she was, standing at the podium, black robe draped over her shoulders, calm as stone, Justice Amora Lewis. He tried to shrink into the back row, but she saw him. He knew she did. Her eyes brushed past him once, only once, but it was enough to melt every ounce of arrogance he had left. She raised her right hand and took the oath, her voice steady, strong. Every word struck like thunder disguised as calm. When the applause filled the room, she stepped forward to speak. I was raised, she began, to believe that justice doesn't start in the courtroom. It starts at the desk. It starts with how we treat people before they ever see a judge. Murmurs spread through crowd. Thomas couldn't breathe. Respect, she continued, her eyes moving slowly across the room, isn't something you give because of titles or skin. It's something you give because it's right. Her gaze paused, for the briefest second, at the man in the back, face pale, hands trembling. Then she looked away. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered, cameras flashed, and somewhere behind the chairs, Thomas heard the sound of something breaking. Not glass, not paper, something deeper, something inside him. That night, he sat in his car long after the ceremony ended. The courthouse lights flickered in his rear-view mirror. He replayed the morning over and over. Every word, every smirk, every moment he thought he was superior. He whispered to himself, "What did I do?" But the answer was already spreading through social media. Clips of the ceremony, the quote about respect, and whispers of what had happened that morning at the clerk's counter. People were asking questions. Reporters were digging. By the next morning, his name would trend for all the wrong reasons. But that's part two, because before we see him fall, we have to understand her rise. And the world needs to know who Amora Lewis really was, and why she never raised her voice that day. The world only saw the calm woman in the gray suit. The headlines called her the future of justice. But behind that poise, behind that silence, was a childhood carved from humiliation, loss, and a promise whispered to God under the hum of broken fluorescent lights. Her name was Amora Lewis. And long before she became Justice Amora Lewis, she was just a little black girl from the south side of Birmingham, Alabama, whose mother once told her, "Baby, silence aren't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy." The childhood fire. The Lewis family lived in a two-room apartment above a laundromat. The walls sweated in summer. The floors creaked when the trains passed. Her mother, Evelyn Lewis, worked double shifts as a cleaner at Jefferson County Courthouse. Her father, Henry, worked at a steel plant until his back gave out and his spirit followed. Amora used to wait up for her mother at night, small, sleepy, sitting by the window while the smell of bleach and fatigue drifted in. Evelyn would smile, tired eyes shining. "Still up, baby?" "Wanted to make sure you came back," Amora would whisper. Evelyn laughed softly. "I always come back, don't I?" But one night changed everything. It was a rainy Tuesday. Evelyn came home late, face streaked with tears, uniform damp, hand shaking. Amora ran to her. "Mama, what's wrong?" Her mother tried to hide it, but couldn't. "I got sent home today," she said quietly. "Why?" She hesitated. "I spoke when I shouldn't have." Amora frowned. "What did you say?" Evelyn sat down on the couch, staring at the floor. "There was a clerk at the courthouse," she whispered. "Young, white, full of attitude. I asked him to help an old lady who didn't understand the forms. He told me, 'That's not your place.' Said folks like me should stay in our lane." Amora's small hands balled into fists. "What did you do?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "I said, 'Maybe my lane's just wider than yours.' He didn't like that." Amora blinked back tears. "Did he fire you?" "No, baby, but he made sure I felt small." Her voice cracked. "You ever felt that? Someone look right through you, like you ain't worth their breath." Amora nodded slowly. though she didn't fully understand. Her mother touched her cheek. "Promise me something," she said. "When they make you feel small, don't yell. Don't beg. Don't break. Just stand tall and let time do the talking." That night, Amora sat awake long after her mother fell asleep, listening to the storm outside, promising herself she'd never let anyone make her mother's pain repeat itself. At school, Amora was quiet. Too quiet for teachers who preferred loud, easy-to-read students. When she didn't speak, they mistook her silence for confusion. Maybe she needs remedial help, one teacher said during a parent meeting. Her mother just smiled politely. Maybe you need to ask her what she thinks before you decide what she can do. By 12, Amora was reading To Kill a Mockingbird and annotating every courtroom scene. By 16, she had Mima I's Brown versus Board of Education. She didn't want to be a lawyer because it sounded fancy. She wanted to be one because every time she saw someone get dismissed, ignored, or spoken over, something inside her whispered, "This is not how it's supposed to be." At 17, Amora entered a citywide debate competition. She was the only black girl on the stage. When it was her turn to speak, one of the judges whispered to another, "Let's see if she can even pronounce the big words." She heard it. Everyone did. But she smiled, adjusted her blazer, and delivered a speech so sharp it sliced through their bias like glass through silk. After the event, that same judge approached her and said, "You are surprisingly articulate." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her silence was her answer. Again, years later, Harvard Law felt like a dream that didn't want her. She was surrounded by confidence, the kind born from money and lineage. She had neither. One night, after being talked over in a seminar for the 10th time, she sat in her dorm bathroom, staring at her reflection. Tears ran quietly down her face. "Maybe I'm not supposed to be here," she whispered. Then she remembered her mother's words. "Don't yell. Don't beg. Don't break." So she didn't. She studied harder, spoke less, and when she did speak, professors leaned in. By graduation, she wasn't just top of her class. She was the first student ever to receive both the Langston Civil Rights Scholarship and the Dean's Medal of Ethics. But still, when she walked into interviews, they looked past her. Maybe litigation isn't your strength. You're better suited for community work. Clients might prefer someone more familiar. She smiled each time, wrote their words down, filed them under a single mental folder labeled fuel. When she was 28, Amora returned to Birmingham for a case that shook the city. A black teenager was accused of stealing a police officer's gun. The evidence was weak, but the pressure to convict was strong. Amora stood in that courtroom, heart pounding, every eye judging her not as a lawyer, but as a symbol. The prosecutor smirked, whispering, "You think they'll listen to you?" Amora looked at the jury, her voice steady. "I don't need them to listen to me. I need them to listen to the truth." And somehow, they did. Verdict, not guilty. She won. But when she stepped outside, the same courthouse clerk who had mocked her mother decades earlier, older now, gray hair and resentment, was still there. He saw her and scoffed. Guess even charity cases can win one once in a while. She didn't respond, just walked past him. Same silence, same calm, but inside, she felt something burn. She realized that no matter how high she climbed, there would always be someone waiting to remind her of the chain she'd broken. So she stopped waiting for validation. She built her own justice. Her mother didn't live to see her daughter sworn in as a judge. Cancer took her too soon. But the night before she passed, she whispered one last time. "When they tell you, you don't belong, just smile. Because the day is coming when they'll need to ask your permission to stay." Amora kissed her forehead and promised. Years later, she kept that promise, standing in the same courthouse where her mother had been humiliated, now holding a black robe in her hands. The staff clapped. Cameras flashed. She smiled. But inside, she remembered that laundromat apartment, that rainstorm, that pain that turned into purpose. So when Thomas Harlan told her, "You don't belong here," she didn't hear it for herself. She heard it for every mother, every daughter, and every tired soul who had ever swallowed that same poison and smiled through it. She didn't need to argue, because she knew time would do the talking, and time was right on schedule. The sound of flashbulbs was deafening. Cameras popped like gunfire in slow motion, lighting up her face as she stood behind the podium. Dr. Maya Harlow, the President's nominee for the Supreme Court of the United States. And yet, as the world celebrated, she felt only the weight of history pressing on her chest. Behind her calm smile, memories flickered like lightning. The clerk's smirk, the whispered doubts, the years of being told no. Now the same world that once ignored her name was chanting it in admiration. But admiration, she knew, was fickle. It could turn into suspicion the moment a black woman rose too high. Dr. Harlow, a reporter shouted from the press pit. What do you say to critics who claim your nomination was more about diversity optics than merit? Her jaw tightened, not visibly, but enough for those who knew her to see. She gave a polite smile. I say that a lifetime of work is not an optical illusion. The room went silent for a breath. Then, applause. But in the corner, half hidden behind a marble pillar, stood Thomas Keene. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't press, wasn't staff. He'd found a way in under the guise of administrative support. His eyes were locked on her, a cocktail of guilt, jealousy, and disbelief swirling behind them. He watched her radiate confidence, her voice commanding senators and journalists alike, the same voice he once tried to silence with mockery. Now, it filled the room like judgment. When the conference ended, Maya walked into a smaller chamber. Advisors surrounded her, campaign aides, legal scholars, media handlers. Everyone was smiling. Everyone wanted a quote, a handshake, a photo. Except her. She drifted toward the window, watching the reflection of the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. Dr. Harlow. It was attorney Lisa Monroe, her old friend from Georgetown, now part of the White House legal team. You did incredible, Lisa said softly. You owned that room. Maya nodded, her eyes still distant. Owning a room is easy. Owning history, that's the hard part. Lisa tilted her head. You're thinking about him again, aren't you? Maya turned, surprised. Who? The clerk. The one who... Don't. Maya interrupted, but there was no anger, just quiet fatigue. Is irrelevant. Lisa frowned. You sure about that? Because rumor has it he's been talking. To reporters. Maya's gaze sharpened. About what? Lisa hesitated. He's been claiming you pulled strings, that you weren't vetted properly, trying to stir something before the hearings. Maya's heart sank, not from fear, but from disgust. She'd seen it before. Men like Thomas rarely fought fair. They whispered from shadows, hoping someone else would throw the first stone. That night, the news cycle spun faster than truth could catch up. Online forums buzzed with conspiracy theories. Unqualified nominee fast-track for diversity points. Anonymous sources quoted insider courthouse staff. Thomas's name didn't appear, but his fingerprints were all over it. He sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, face glowing in blue light. His hand trembled as he scrolled through the headlines. He didn't mean for it to spiral this far. Or maybe he did. The bitterness had grown into something darker, a desire to see her stumble, to remind the world that she was human. He told himself it wasn't racism, just accountability. But deep down, he knew better. The same poison he carried in his voice that day at the counter was now in his fingertips, typing lies into the night. Meanwhile, Maya's phone buzzed nonstop. Text after text. News anchors. Senators. Friends. Enemies pretending to be both. She sat in her study, lights low, paper spread before her like battle plans. Every case she'd ever argued. Every speech. Every publication. Proof of merit. But merit was never enough for women like her. Her mother's words echoed from years ago. You will have to be twice as good just to be seen as equal. Maya whispered to the empty room. What if twice isn't enough? Her reflection in the dark window stayed back, tired, proud, unbreakable. Then, a knock. Lisa stepped in, holding an envelope. It's official. The Senate hearings next week. Maya nodded. Let them come. The day of the hearing arrived. The Senate chamber buzzed like a hive. Reporters lined the walls, cameras pointed like weapons. Maya walked in wearing a navy suit, her grandmother's silver brooch pinned to her lapel. Every step felt heavier than the last. Senator Royce, a man known for his performative outrage, leaned forward, smirking. Dr. Harlow, he began, some claim your appointment was based more on representation than qualification. How do you respond? Maya clasped her hands. Representation is not charity, Senator. It's justice. The audience murmured. Royce smiled thinly. I see. And do you believe your experiences with discrimination affect your ability to be impartial? Her gaze cut through him like glass. On the contrary, they taught me what injustice looks like up close. Gasps. Cameras clicked. Lisa, sitting behind her, smiled, proud but nervous. Then came the final question. Dr. Harlow, Royce said, have you ever faced accusations of professional misconduct? The air stilled. Maya blinked. No, Senator. Royce smirked. Interesting. Because a member of this very courthouse claims you misused your position for personal gain during your early tenure. Maya's jaw tightened. Who? Royce flipped the paper. A Mr. Thomas Keene. The room erupted. Thomas sat at home watching the broadcast, his face pale. He hadn't expected it to reach that level. He'd only wanted a rumor, a bruise, not a full-blown accusation on national television. As Maya defended herself with grace and calm precision, he realized he'd made a fatal mistake. She wasn't breaking. She was rising higher. Every attempt to discredit her only made her more powerful, because her poise under fire was being watched by millions, and the truth was shining through every word. When the hearing ended, the president himself called. Maya, he said warmly, you handle that like a titan. The vote's next week, and between us, it's looking good. She exhaled softly. Relief didn't come. Not yet, because she knew the world wasn't done testing her. And somewhere out there, the man who tried to humiliate her was now trying to destroy her from behind a screen. But she also knew something Thomas didn't. The higher the light rises, the longer the shadows stretch, and his was about to catch up with him. That night, she stood outside on her balcony, city lights flickering below. Lisa joined her quietly. You did it, Lisa whispered. Not yet, Maya said, but soon. Do you want me to find out who fed them that story? Maya smiled faintly. No need. Why not? Because I already know. Her eyes drifted toward the courthouse glowing in the distance, the place where it all began, the place where he thought she didn't belong. Now, the question wasn't whether Thomas would fall. It was how. The first sound Thomas heard that morning wasn't his alarm. It was his phone, vibrating endlessly on the nightstand. He groaned, half asleep, until he saw the screen. 32 missed calls, 8 voicemails, all from courthouse numbers. Then the text appeared. See the news. His chest tightened. He grabbed the remote, flicked on the TV, and there it was, his own name, crawling across the bottom of the screen. Court Clerk Thomas Keene under investigation for leaking false information on Supreme Court nominee. The air drained out of him. Reporters outside his building. Cameras waiting, the same way they once waited for her. Now, he was the headline, the villain of a story he'd written himself. In the courthouse, whispers moved faster than paper. Did you hear? They caught him. Apparently, he sent emails to a blogger under a fake name. I heard Dr. Harlow's team trace the IP directly back to his desk. Every voice was hushed, not out of pity, but fear. The kind of fear that comes from realizing the system will devour its own the moment it smells weakness. Thomas stumbled through the hallway, pale and sweating. People who used to laugh at his jokes now looked away. When he reached his office, a security officer stood by the door. Mr. Keene, the officer said quietly, you'll need to come with us. The interrogation room was small, gray, unkind. A woman in a dark suit sat across from him. Agent Naomi Trent, Department of Justice. Her eyes were sharp, voice steady. Mr. Keene, you've been accused of leaking internal documents and fabricating allegations against a federal nominee. Do you deny it? Thomas stammered. I didn't leak anything. I just shared concerns. Concerns, she repeated. You created a fake email chain implying misconduct. I was angry, he muttered. She humiliated me. Agent Trent leaned forward. Humiliation isn't a crime, Mr. Keene. What you did is... He swallowed hard, eyes darting to the small camera in the corner. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, the kind of man who finally realized he wasn't a hero of his own story. Later that night, news broke again. Clerk faces termination, possible charges in DOJ leak case. Online, thousands of comments poured in. Karma. He picked the wrong woman to disrespect. Dr. Harlow handled it with grace. This is justice. Thomas read every word. Each one felt like a nail sealing a coffin. His phone rang again. His supervisor. Thomas, it's over. The Chief Justice wants your badge by morning. He hung up without replying. For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the TV. Then the anger came, sudden, blind, consuming. He hurled the remote at the wall. It shattered. So did something inside him. Meanwhile, in Washington, the vote took place. Maya sat still as a roll call echoed through the Senate chamber. One by one, voices filled the air. I. Lisa sat beside her, gripping her hand. Maya's face was unreadable, a mask carved from years of restraint. Then came the final count. The nomination of Dr. Maya Harlow is hereby confirmed. Applause thundered through the chamber. Cameras flashed. History shifted. But Maya didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply closed her eyes, whispered something under her breath. A name, a prayer, a memory. Because she knew triumph wasn't about victory. It was about survival. That night, a storm rolled over the city. Thunder rumbled like judgment. Maya sat in her office, alone, watching the rain crawl down the window. Lisa entered quietly, holding a manila folder. "It's done," she said. "Keene's been terminated. DOJ's pressing charges for falsification of federal records." Maya didn't turn. She just nodded. Lisa hesitated. "You could have buried him if you wanted, but you didn't." Maya finally looked up. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned. "Some people dig their own graves. I just don't hand them the shovel." Lisa stared at her, both in awe and sadness. "You really forgive him?" Maya looked out at the rain again. "Forgive? No, I just understand him." Across town, Thomas sat in a cheap motel. His career, gone. His reputation, destroyed. He scrolled through his phone, watching clips of Maya's confirmation speech. Her voice was steady, commanding, unstoppable. Every word was a mirror reflecting everything he tried to suppress. Her brilliance, her dignity, her strength. She said, "To every little girl who's been told she doesn't belong, keep walking, because one day you'll stand where they said you couldn't." Thomas turned off the video, trembling. He whispered to himself, "She's talking about me." But deep down, he knew she wasn't. She was talking about everyone like her, and everyone like him who tried to stop them. Days passed, then weeks. Maya took her seat on the bench, black robe draped over her shoulders, the Supreme Court seal glinting behind her. The courtroom was silent as she raised her right hand and swore her oath. Outside, crowds gathered. Signs held high, history made. Justice for all. In that moment, the woman Thomas had mocked became something larger than either of them, a symbol of everything he'd refused to see. And somewhere, sitting alone in the dim motel light, he watched it unfold on TV, unable to look away. He took a long breath, then opened the drawer. Inside was an unopened letter, stamped from the Department of Justice. The formal notice of indictment. He didn't read it. He just stared at his reflection in the cracked mirror above the sink. The man who once thought himself powerful was now just a face fading from relevance. But before dawn, something unexpected happened. An envelope slid under Maya's office door. No sender, no address, just her name. Inside, a single page, a handwritten note. "You didn't destroy me. You taught me what I really was. TK." She read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it inside her desk drawer. Lisa found her later, still sitting there in silence. "What was that?" Lisa asked. "Closure," Maya said softly. "Or maybe confession." That night, Maya finally smiled. Not for the cameras, Not for the press, but for herself. Because she understood now. Every insult, every barrier, every moment of doubt, it all led here. To power, to purpose, to peace. Thomas's downfall wasn't just his punishment. It was a liberation. And as the city slept, lightning flickered across the sky, reflecting in her office window like justice itself. Sharp, fleeting, and absolute. The Supreme Court building stood like a cathedral against the night. Rain whispered across its marble steps, washing away the day's noise. Inside, the halls were empty, except for one light still burning behind the frosted glass of Justice Maya Harlow's chambers. She sat at her desk, reading through old case briefs, her pen moving with surgical precision. But her eyes weren't really on the paper. They kept drifting to the drawer, the one holding his letter. It had been weeks since Thomas Keene's quiet disappearance from the news cycle. No court updates, no interviews, nothing. He'd simply vanished. The world had already moved on, but Maya hadn't, because closure, she was learning, was never clean. It started with an envelope, another one, this time official, Department of Justice seal press in red wax. Lisa Monroe had dropped it on her desk earlier that morning. Background updates, she'd said casually. Just something you might want to see. Now, alone, Maya opened it. Inside was a short internal memo, one line highlighted. Subject, Thomas Keene, deceased. Apparent suicide, 11:47 p.m., Fairfax Motel. The words didn't sink in right away. Her hand froze, pen slipping from her fingers. For a long moment, she didn't breathe. The man who once laughed in her face was gone. Maya closed her eyes. In the dark behind her eyelids, memories came like ghosts. His smirk at the counter, his stutter when he realized who she was, his eyes in that last note. You didn't destroy me. You taught me what I really was. She thought it was closure. Now it felt like confession. Or maybe a warning. That night, she drove. No motorcade. No security detail. Just her car, gliding through the wet streets of D.C., headlights cutting through mist. The road led her back to the courthouse, the same building where it all began. Empty now, locked for the night. But she still parked in the same spot. The same door. The same marble hallway that had once echoed with his mockery. She stood there in silence, her reflection caught in the glass doors. The woman she saw wasn't the same one he'd insulted. This one carried power. But power didn't always feel like victory. It felt heavy. A sound startled her. Footsteps behind her. Slow, deliberate. Maya. She turned. It was Detective Naomi Trent. Trench coat slick with rain. Badge glinting under the dim light. You shouldn't be here, Naomi said quietly. I needed to see it, Maya replied. Where it started. Naomi stuttered her. You heard about Keene. Maya nodded. Just this morning. The detective hesitated. There's something else. She handed Maya a small evidence bag. Inside was a crumpled piece of motel stationery. One line scrawled across it. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Tell her, I'm sorry. Naomi's voice softened. He left that on the nightstand. Your name was on the envelope. Maya's throat tightened. Rain streaked down the window beside them, blurring the reflection of her own face until it looked like a stranger's. Later, she sat alone in her car, reading the note again. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was a confession of defeat, and something deeper, remorse. She whispered to herself, why do I still feel sorry for him? Then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Justice has a price. Are you ready to pay it? Her heart skipped. The number traced back to an encrypted network. No name, no ID. She showed it to Lisa the next morning. Lisa frowned. Could be a troll. You're high profile now. People love to provoke. Or maybe someone knows something, Maya said softly. 2 days later, the truth came out in the most unexpected way. A journalist from the Washington Beacon released a bombshell article. Former clerk's death raises questions about internal corruption. The report revealed that Thomas Keene hadn't been working alone. He'd been pushed, manipulated by a shadow figure inside the court administration. Someone who wanted to use him to sabotage Maya's nomination for political leverage. Thomas wasn't the architect of a defamation. He was a pawn. And when the plot failed, they discarded him. Quietly, Maya sat frozen as she read the article. Everything suddenly relined. The humiliation, the leak, the accusation, it had all been orchestrated. Thomas had only been the mouthpiece. And she, the target. Her mind replayed every moment she dismissed him as weak, petty, small. But now she realized he'd been desperate, cornered, used. The letter wasn't about guilt. It was about fear. He hadn't killed himself out of shame. He'd been silenced. That night, Maya met Naomi again, this time in a quiet diner on the outskirts of town. Steam curled up from their coffee cups. Naomi slid a file across the table. Unofficially, you didn't get this from me. Maya opened it. Inside were photos, hotel surveillance stills. Thomas wasn't alone the night he died. A tall man in a dark coat had entered his room. Never identified. Never questioned. The timestamp, 15 minutes before the estimated time of death. Maya's hand trembled. Who is he? Naomi sighed. Internal Affairs says he doesn't exist. But the badge he flashed on the camera looked like federal. Silence. Heavy. Inevitable. Maya whispered, someone inside wanted me gone. Naomi nodded, and when he failed, they made him the message. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat on her balcony again, watching the city burn with electric light. History had written her name in gold, but the ink beneath it was red. Justice, power, blood, they always ran together. She thought about Thomas, the man who insulted her, envied her, betrayed her, and now, in a cruel twist, he had become her warning. In the reflection of her glass window, lightning flashed. For a second, she swore she saw him standing behind her, not haunting, just watching, like someone still asking for forgiveness. Weeks later, Maya delivered her first Supreme Court opinion. The case, a civil rights ruling, Harlow versus State of Georgia. Her words would shape generations. In her closing remarks, she wrote, "Justice is not revenge. It is revelation. The truth we fear most is often the one that sets us free." The courtroom rose in applause. Lisa wiped a tear. Naomi nodded from the back row. But Maya didn't look up. She stared at the seal of the court above her, the symbol of justice, and for the first time, she wondered whether true justice ever really existed. Because for all her victories, there were still shadows under the marble floors, still names buried beneath polished statements, still ghosts that never quite let go. Later that evening, she opened her drawer one last time. Thomas's first note lay there, faded around the edges. She unfolded it, reading the words she'd memorized long ago. "You didn't destroy me. You taught me what I really was." She whispered, almost to herself, "No, Thomas, you taught me what power really costs." Then she struck a match, lit the corner of the letter, and watched it burn to ash in her hand. The flame danced for a second, bright, fleeting, beautiful, just like justice. She didn't need revenge. Her success was a verdict. And the sentence? He'd have to live in a world where the woman he disrespected now signed the laws he was forced to obey. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in the courtroom. It comes when the tables turn, silently, inevitably, and perfectly. If this story hit you in the chest, don't just scroll. Hit subscribe, because out here, every story hides a truth. Every voice deserves to be heard. And every insult has its reckoning. Subscribe to Crime Shock Files, where the stories are real, the lessons are heavy, and justice always finds its way home. She didn't need revenge. Her success was a verdict. And the sentence? He'd have to live in a world where the woman he disrespected now signed the laws he was forced to obey. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in the courtroom. It comes when the tables turn, silently, inevitably, and perfectly. If this story hit you in the chest, don't just scroll. Hit subscribe, because out here, Every story hides a truth. Every voice deserves to be heard. And every insult has its reckoning. Subscribe to Crime Shock Files, where the stories are real, the lessons are heavy, and justice always finds its way home.